Good morning. This is Chair French, and I am convening the regularly scheduled business meeting of the Kansas Corporation Commission for this Tuesday, November 2nd, 2021, joined by my colleagues, Commissioner Duffy and Commissioner Keene. On today's agenda, we have 19 consent agenda items, 3 noticed items, and we also have a hearing, a public hearing on proposed gas pipeline safety regulation amendments. So with that agenda in mind, we will begin with our consent agenda. Commissioners, you've had the opportunity to review all of the proposed items on the consent agenda for our consideration. Let me ask at this time whether you have any questions or comments on those items, and I will begin with Commissioner Keene. It does look like you are on mute, Commissioner Keene.
There
you go.
Good morning, Chair French. I have no questions.
Commissioner Duffy. I caught you mid-drink. My apologies.
Excuse me, I had a tickle in my throat. I have no questions, and I move approval of the consent agenda items.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, those in favor, please vote aye.
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 Aye. The consent agenda is approved. We will now move to our noticed items. Our first noticed item is in docket number 22 EKCE 141 PRE. And this is a proposed order granting Evergy's request to temporarily suspend procedural schedule. Our presenter for this item is Mr. Brian Fedotin. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning. Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you. On September 30th, the Commission issued an order setting procedural schedule in this docket. On October 26th, Evergy filed a request to temporarily suspend the procedural schedule, citing the need to allow more time to develop information to evaluate its predetermination filing. On October 28th, Commission staff expressed its support for Evergy's request. On October 29th, CURB stated it had no objection to Evergy's request, provided that Evergy confer with CURB in addition to staff before proposing a new procedural schedule. Evergy's request to temporarily suspend the procedural schedule is granted. Evergy should work with both staff and CURB to develop a new procedural schedule. With that, I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions for Mr. Fedotin? I will begin with Commissioner Keene.
Not for me, thank you.
And Commissioner Duffy.
None for me as well. And with that, I move approval of the order.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the described order in this docket. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, those in favor, please vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. The order is approved. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you,
We
Commissioners.
now move to our second noticed item. This is in docket number 22 CONS 3171 CMSC, and it is a proposed order approving compliance agreement. And our presenter for this item is Mr. Kelsey Marsh. Good morning, Kelsey.
Good morning, and thank you, Commissioners. Before you is an order approving the compliance agreement between Commission staff and Van Rooyen Oil and Gas LLC regarding 50 wells out of compliance with KAR 823111. The terms of the agreement state that the operator shall bring 2 of the inactive wells into compliance with KAR 823111 by December 31st, 2021. Further, the operator shall bring an additional 2 wells into compliance with KAR 823111 each 3 calendar months thereafter, resulting in all 50 wells being returned to compliance by December 31st, 2027. With that, I would recommend approval of the order, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Marsh. Are there any questions for Kelsey on this item, beginning with Commissioner Keene?
No questions, a couple of comments, if I may. This matter in this order basically emanates from District 3. The 50 wells that are on here, I think that comprises a fair number of wells. I believe the schedule that the district office has worked out with the operator to commence and hopefully conclude the plugging of these wells is, I think it's reasonable. But in particular, what I want to do is commend our district staff, the field staff, all the ECRS personnel that were involved in for this number of wells. It's quite a laborious undertaking to go through the process of field verifying all the information that needs to be compiled in order to provide these things that incidental to the compliance agreement itself. And in the process of doing that, I would not only commend our field staff and all those field personnel who were involved, but in particular, I want to commend John Allman, who is the compliance officer for District 3. Unfortunately, until let's maybe talk him out of it, John's thinking about retiring in the not too distant future. But John does a splendid job on all of these in terms of compiling all the documentation to provide verification of well design and eligibility for these kinds of programs. And he's done this consistently over a number of years, but I just wanted to pay special recognition to John, his efforts here in general, and in particular with respect to this order. Thank you, John, for your efforts.
Thank you, Commissioner King. Commissioner Duffy, any questions or comments?
Yes, I do have a question. Kelsey, this is a large number of wells. In fact, since I've been here, I'm not aware we've approved this many at one time for an operator. That said, this agreement goes out virtually 6 years. During that time frame, is the staff looking to ensure that the most needed get plugged first? And during 6 years, a lot of things can happen. So what goes on in the field to ensure that we are plugging the highest priority need?
Certainly. Well, I know as part of the agreement, commission staff is able to prioritize wells that have could be, potential public safety threat or threat to fresh and usable water. So if those wells come to staff's attention, then they can coordinate with the operator and say, hey, these wells need to be a priority and be addressed within the next quarter. As far as how regularly staff checks up on these wells, I'm not entirely sure. We'd have to check with our District 3 staff just because there are a large number of wells in District 3, especially.
Sure.
But my understanding is, I imagine they check up on them at least on an annual basis or somewhat regular basis.
Okay. And how, assuming the operator is timely in their plugging of the wells, we're assuming that will be the case, but how quickly will we find out if the operator has not plugged the next set during the quarterly timeframe?
Certainly. So a lot of the District 3 numbers in particular have the same deadlines. So I usually receive a status update on all the agreements from District 3, and that's usually about a week or two after the deadline. So there is a slight delay there, but John Allman in District 3 is pretty good about getting that information to me as quickly as they can compile it.
And it's my understanding that this operator is held in high or good regard with the district in order to have such a long-term compliance agreement.
I don't know with 100% certainty on that, but I would assume that that is somewhat of the case because the District 3 office felt comfortable with the terms in the agreement that they recommended.
Okay, very good. I do think staff, I agree with Commissioner King, they should be commended for the work they've done on this project. And it will take additional staff time and work to ensure that the contract remains valid and that the operator is successfully plugging wells per the contract. With that, Mr. Chairman, I do move approval of this order.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the described order in this docket. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, those in favor, please vote aye.
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 Aye. The order is approved. Thank you, Mr. Marsh.
Thank you.
We now move to our third noticed item today. This is in docket number 21, CONS 3190 CPEN. And this is a proposed emergency shut-in order. And our presenter for this item is Mr. Tristan Kimbrell. Morning, Tristan.
Thank you. Commissioners, before you is an emergency shut-in order for One Source Financial Services Incorporated. On October 29th, Commission staff inspected operators Fritz number A1 well and discovered that it is leaking natural gas into the atmosphere. The well is located in a wheat field that is being actively farmed. Under KSA 55-162B, the Commission may make orders on the basis of emergency adjudicative proceedings if damage may result if immediate remedial action is not taken. This order directs Commission staff to immediately shut in the Fritz number A1 well to stop it from leaking natural gas. The order also directs Commission staff to inspect operators' other wells to determine if any of them pose an imminent threat of damage and to immediately shut in those wells if they do present such a threat. With that, I would recommend approval of the order, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Tristan. Let me ask at this time whether any commissioners have questions on this item, and I will begin with Commissioner Keen.
Thank you, Chair French. Good morning, Tristan.
Good morning.
A couple of questions from me. Do we have any idea, even an estimation of what the volume of gas that's being released into the atmosphere is in this instance?
No, I don't think we have an estimation of the amount of gas.
Okay. And as I remember reading the order, there was one of the findings had to do with there was a loose connection coming from the well also that was headed into either a gathering line or some kind of lead line leading to the sales line. Is that right?
I believe so, or the hose itself may have been leaking. I'm not sure that staff was able to determine precisely where the leak was coming from.
And refresh my recollection, do you recall how many wells are on this lease that are controlled by this operator?
This operator has about 35 gas wells that are currently producing.
All gas wells, right?
Yes, yes. Well, except for a couple of saltwater disposal wells. Yes.
Okay. All right. And I'm taking it that given the emergency nature of the order, that in the event the commission approves this order, that the field staff is pretty much prepared to take immediate action. Am I correct on that?
Yes, absolutely. Staff has had difficulty contacting this operator in the past, and so there is concern that there may be other gas wells that are leaking as well.
Okay. Is access to the premises a question, or do you know?
I do not believe that's an issue, no.
Okay. No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Keen. Commissioner Duffy, any questions on this item?
Yes, good morning, Tristan. It's my understanding that with the approval of this order, that staff will take action immediately. However, the operator still has 30 days to come back and request a hearing, but our action will precede that hearing, correct?
Yes, Commissioner.
Okay. And the covering over the well piece blew away.
I believe the shed covering the well blew over in the recent weather where the wind was so high. I believe it knocked the shed over, and that's what caused damage to the well.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you for the answer to the question. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I move approval of this emergency order.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the described order in this docket. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, those in favor, please vote aye.
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 Aye. The order is approved. Thank you, Tristan. We have now moved past all of our docket noticed items. We will now move into our final agenda item, which is a public hearing on proposed gas pipeline safety regulation amendments. And I will convene that public hearing at this time. But now I will turn it over to our presenter for this item, Mr. Cole Bailey.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Everyone hear me all right? Okay, let's see, back in 2019, on April 30th, this commission issued an order to amend our pipeline safety regs to be in more conformance with the federal regs. We spent about 3 years going back and forth with the various agencies to get those, exactly as they want. And a few months ago, we got approval from the Department of Budget, the DOA, and the DA's office. And we have 82.11.2, 82.11.3, 82.11.4, 11.6, 11.7, and 11.10 stamped by all three agencies. On September 10, we had a hearing. Staff had a hearing that I attended as well with the Joint Committee of Administrative Rules and Regulations, JCAR. We gave them a brief rundown of the changes that we were making, and they had no questions. Before that, we on August 26th on our website, we gave notice to the public that we'd be having this public hearing today. No one from the public has contacted me or PACP, and there are no comments from the public at this time. Going forward, if you guys can interrupt me anytime you'd like, I'm just going to give a brief, explanation of the changes that we are making on these regulations. So Section 60.105 of the Natural Gas Pipeline Safety Act allows states to enforce pipeline safety standards provided the state is certified by the U.S. Department of Transportation on an annual basis. One of the conditions of the DOT certification requires the state to adopt federal regulations and state rules. On approximately a 2-year basis, our staff updates state regulations to incorporate the latest federal amendments. Kansas also has regulations that are more stringent than federal regulation. During these periodic updates, we also take the opportunity to review and update as necessary any Kansas-specific regulation as well. A summary of the proposed amendments to the regulations, including the proposed purpose of each, is as follows. KAR 82.11.2, this is enforcement procedures. The proposed amendments to this regulation clarify the procedural hierarchy at the Kansas Corporation Commission. The current regulation indicates commission staff will enforce the regulations adopted by the commission. In actuality, the commission itself enforces its regulation. Commission staff investigates alleged violations of pipeline safety and may bring enforcement actions before the commission. 82.11.3 is transportation of natural and other gas by pipeline annual reports and incident reports. The proposed amendments to 82.11.3 update the regulations adoption of relevant federal regulations to 2018. Previously, they were adopted to 2010. Specifically, 82.11.3 adopts 49 CFR Part 191. The proposed amendments are necessary to ensure Kansas pipeline regulations appropriately mirror the federal counterparts. 82.11.4, transportation of natural and other gas by pipeline minimum safety standards. The proposed amendments to 11.4 update the regulations adopted by federal regulations to 2018 editions. Specifically, it adopts 49 CFR Part 192. The proposed amendments are necessary to ensure Kansas pipeline regs appropriately mirror the federal counterparts. Commissioner King, you popped up. Did you have something you wanted to ask?
No.
Okay,
Thank you.
I was just checking. 82.11.6, we're almost done. 82.11.6 procedures to ensure compliance with minimum safety standards. 11.6 establish a uniform procedural framework for enforcing Kansas pipeline safety standards and other safety related proceedings. The commission is responsible for enforcing Kansas Underground Utility Damage Prevention Act. That's sometimes referred to as CUDPA. Through similar nature, enforcement actions brought under Kansas pipeline safety standards differ procedurally from CUDPA. These amendments to 11.6 refine pipeline safety procedures to mirror those. as much as applicable to the cutbook procedures. So it's more, I guess, easier for proposed or possible violations to understand what will happen next if they receive a notice of a violation. 11.7, these are reporting requirements. The proposed amendments of 11.7 strike a redundant regulatory provision. The annual and incident reporting requirements struck from 82.11.7 are contained and adopted by reference in 82.11.3. Or are already required from pipeline operators pursuant to 49 CFR Part 191.5. In addition, the proposed amendments to 11.7 require natural gas pipeline operators to resubmit construction notices for projects if the project has not started or has been started but not yet completed by year end. And finally, 11.10, 82.11.10, drug and alcohol testing. The proposed amendments to KAR 82.11.10 update drug and alcohol testing requirements. Presently, Kansas pipeline related drug and alcohol regulations adopted by reference a 2010 federal regulation. The proposed amendments update to the 2018 version of the federal regulation. And I will stand for questions if you have any. But if there are none, I believe you all have a copy of a roll call vote. And so I think that's how this process will go forward. I'm not sure.
Well, thank you, Cole, for the explanation of the reg changes. Let me ask at this time whether either commissioner has any questions or comments on these regulation changes, and just raise your hand at me if you have anything you'd like to ask Mr. Bailey. Go ahead, Commissioner Duffy.
Yeah, I do have a comment. Just quickly on the administrative process of getting rules and regs through from start to finish. It is not for the faint of heart to attempt rule and reg change. It is a long journey involving many stops along the way and much time in between. So I do want to express to staff at all levels who participated in this long journey to get the rules and regs to this point where we vote on them today, our gratitude. It's necessary that we keep up and ensure that our rule and reg are consistent either at the federal level or with our state law. And we have done that, and especially in this area of natural gas and the regulation of pipeline safety, it is extremely important that on this side of the process that we are diligent, and again, we have been.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Commissioner
Mr.
Duffy.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Commissioner Keen.
Yes. Thank you for the presentation, Cole. It was a good overview. I have a question. I'm going to direct it to either you or to Leo House. I see he's on the line. And I guess my first question really relates back to the point that Commissioner Duffy was just making about the arduous process in the adoption of these regs. And these are permanent regulations that we're looking at here this morning. This is no temporary wonder here. This is the final reg. And I guess maybe Leo, in fairness to Cole, I direct this question to you. I think Cole indicated this has been a 3-year process from start to where we are right now with on the eve of adoption of these regs. What was the hangup, either substantively or procedurally, to the best of your knowledge? What took so long?
Leo, okay, Leo, you can answer. Okay. Well, there's part of it. I mean, the pandemic adds to it as well, because I have to send these regs to the Department of Budget that has to stamp them before everyone else. The Department of Budget really is only interested in the economic impact of change regs.
Right.
None of these regs have an economic impact, but they still are required to, every time there's, even a single edit, they have to restamp them. And then from there, the Department of Administration, it's usually just one person working and has, this is all she does. So she's extremely busy, and she hand writes the edits and sends them back to me. And then finally, once they're grammatically correct and formatted correctly, we send them to the DA's the Attorney General's office. And the Attorney General, they're not allowed to give us any handwritten or typed materials. I think this is to, they don't want to sign off on any, they don't want to make any predetermination on any of the regs, like, either not violating the law or violating the law. And so they cannot give us any materials. So when we meet with them, we have to take handwritten notes or typed notes as they're speaking with us. And on top of that, it's a process of, even to make a small edit that I find from on the process, it would take, at least 2 weeks to get through every agency. And I think they were going to change this process, but it was kind of sidelined until next year. They may have gone faster, but that's just kind of how it is, I guess. That's all I know, but I don't know if Leo wants to add anything to that, but it's just kind of a step by step, and everyone's just trying to, I guess, doing their own job. So
I would say from my perspective that the longest duration was in the Attorney General's office, but they took a real deep dive into these regulations. They didn't just look at what we were proposing to change. They actually went back and looked at the complete regulation from the beginning. And there were things in there that they corrected that we didn't even propose to change, but they said this is how it should be stated to comport with Kansas law. And of course, once we made that change, it starts the whole iteration again. We go through the whole process. And, I don't even know how many times we went through this, but I would say it's probably close to 5. Is my recollection. It may be more than that.
yeah, I think 6 or 7 times, I think. 'Cause,
Okay.
Robert Vinson, I called him to also congratulate him. He started this 3 years ago. So he had a few trips to the Attorney General's office, and then I took over. So
Well,
I will
Pardon, go
add,
ahead.
Commissioner Keen, I was in Budget Division when they added our approval. That was because some rule and regs had been promulgated and put into effect that had potential consequences for the state of Kansas that had not been identified during the process. So at that point, they began to incorporate the Budget Division to make sure that the fiscal impact was front and center and was not obligating the state to fiscally on issues that had not been really evaluated by the governor or the legislature.
Thank you. Well, I would say this, I didn't even intend by inference, by asking the question to cast aspersions on anyone involved in the process at anywhere along the line of the review and approval. There are due process considerations here. There are consistency with Kansas rules, Kansas law that need to be adhered to. I fully respect that, and I appreciate that. I think sometimes we just wish that the process were a bit speedier than it is. All of those different reviewing authorities all along the way, after all, they are reviewing regulations, temporary and permanent, from virtually all agencies of Kansas government. So they're inundated there. I'm sure that their inbox is almost constantly full. But I can recall in I think it's the first 2 years that I was on the commission, we finally reached a point of having transportation regulations approved that seemed like they had been in the pipeline. I may misstate this, but I think it was longer than 3. I think it was something like 5 years they were in the process. So I think we all share a common frustration. Probably those involved in the review process share a common frustration at certain aspects of it. But anyway, we've reached this point. That's good. I'm glad we're here. I do have one other question, and Leo, I will direct this to you. I think, in fairness to Cole, there is pending, I think, before the legislature, and I think there's a bill that's going to be carried over from the 21 session into the 22 session that has to do with the penalty provisions, I think, under our pipeline safety statute. It's drawn a bit of differences of opinion in the legislature. I believe that it had passed out of the Senate, increasing the fines, was reconsidered by the House, and the House basically, I think they reverted to where it is now. And I think it's now is, if I follow the trail correctly, it's now before probably the Senate, probably Senate Utilities for consideration in the 22 section. Let's assume, for purposes of discussion here, that bill passes. And I offer no opinion about that one way or another, but in the event it did, is there any aspect of or attribute of that bill, to your knowledge, that would require a regulatory effort to bring it to fruition ultimately?
No, I don't think there is. Matter of fact, the way we've described clearly how we do our enforcement procedures will actually help in that regard. The penalty request, again, from PHMSA to somehow come close to matching their penalties is before the legislature. It was last year. There was also a section on gas gathering lines that we didn't have jurisdiction on. That would be before the legislature. Now, we would probably see those this year as two different efforts to give them a chance to evaluate them separately. I think that was, some of the holdup last year. So even with that, though, the regulations as adopted will easily fit for gas gathering lines as well. There's nothing new for that regard. I will say that, we're adopting a 2018 version. It's now 2021. So we have 3 more years worth of federal regulations there, and there's been some changes. So we will see a new effort start here very shortly to try to get this up to date again. And hopefully it'll be much quicker this time, because we've been through the processes, how especially the AG's office wants to see these structured, and I think that'll make it go smoother.
Very good. Well, Leo, thank you so much for your effort and your professional contribution to this process. I mean, we're really benefiting enormously from your knowledge and your experience, and we're all grateful to you for the role you play in pushing these regulations forward in a way that's positive. With that, Mr. Chairman, I have no other questions, but at your pleasure, I would move the approval of these permanent regulations, and in accordance with the approval process, request a roll call vote.
Yeah. Well, we will take that in one moment. Let me ask Cole real quickly. First, let me echo both Commissioner Keene and Commissioner Duffy's comments. I mean, I do want to express my gratitude for you dealing with this process that I know is laborious and tedious and lengthy. So to you, Cole and Leo, and any other pipeline safety staff that worked on this, thank you. Cole, the only questions I had were more just for clarity of the record. I think you already mentioned these in your summary, but just wanted to confirm we did serve notice of this public hearing back in August, so more than 60 days, more than the 60 days that was required under Kansas law, correct?
Yes.
And as far as public comments, we have not received a request to make a public comment orally, and we did not receive any written public comments. Is that correct? Okay. Those were my only questions, just for clarity. Is there any other discussion on the proposed regulations at this time? Hearing none, we will move to a roll call vote. And I will just ask each commissioner, as I say your name, to either to signify with a yes or a no, whether you support adoption of the proposed amendments to the regulations. And I am looking at the certificate of adoption here. It looks like it has my name listed first. So Andrew J. French, and I vote yes. Dwight D. Keene, how do you vote?
Yes.
Susan K. Duffy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. We have 3 yes votes. So we will fill out the certificate of adoption and file that. And Cole, you and Lynn will work to get that filed. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe it does need, I think it would help to have it filed in the docket, and then my next step is to send the certificate that you got, the roll call certificate, with a packet to Secretary of State, and they will do the actual publishing, I believe in 2 weeks, I guess.
Okay, very good.
So let me understand, Chair French, do we actually need to vote on approve the docket itself as well as the certificate?
I don't believe
I
so.
don't-
Okay.
I'll let Cole jump in here, but I don't believe there's any orders for us to approve in the docket. I believe it's just, this is almost a compliance. Adopting these regulations is almost compliance with the order that was already approved. Is that correct,
Yeah.
Cole?
The order approved already requested this, I guess, from the commission or the commissioners that were before, and so all we need is a certificate for the Secretary of State to finish the job.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, Cole, is there anything further that you or staff needs from the commission at this public hearing?
Nothing else. Thank you very much. Unless
right.
Leo has any last words. I guess not. He's not there.
I don't think so. All right. Well, I then am adjourning the public hearing portion of this business meeting, but we are still in the business meeting. We now have reached the end of the noticed items at today's business meeting, however, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn today's business meeting.
So moved.
Second,
A motion and a second to adjourn the business meeting. Those in favor, please vote aye.
aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.